We continue now at the top of Daf Peites Amud Aleph and Mesechet Kesuvos. This is Kesuvos Daf 89a. The Mishnah said, let's say you have a situation where she takes out the get in order to collect her ksuba payment, but she doesn't have the ksuba. So the halacha is gova ksuvasa. In such a situation, even though she doesn't have the document of the ksuba, she can still collect her ksuba based on the get. Rashi over here says gova ksubasa. Ve'eno yacholiton paraticha. You can't claim that I already paid you. Ve'chzarto li shtar ksubasech. That's why you don't have your shtar ksuba, because you already returned it to me. And it's been torn up. Mishum de Tanai Ksuba Maisa Bezdinu, because the condition of the Ksuba is part of a Maisa Bezdin, it's part of an act of the court, and therefore she's allowed to collect with only the get. And the Mishnah continues, Ksuba ve'eni ma get. Let's say you have the opposite case. Let's say she takes out her Ksuba, but she doesn't have her get. So can she collect in such a situation? Hi omeres avad giti. So she says, the reason why I don't have my get is because I lost the get. V'hu omer, but then he responds and says, well, if that's the case, avad shovari. I lost my receipt. Really, I already paid you for the Ksuba. You gave me a receipt, but I lost it, so I don't owe you anything. The fact that you don't have a get means I don't have to pay your Ksuba. And the Mishnah continues, V'chein bal chov, the same thing is true. Let's say you have a bal chov, you have a creditor, shahotzi shtar chov, ve'enim o pruzbul. Let's say he takes out the shtar chov, he wants to collect his debt, but he doesn't have the pruzbul that allows him to collect after the Shemitah year. So hare'elu lo yiparu, in this case also, he's missing an important document, and therefore the person does not have to pay him. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, Min hasakona ve'elach, from the time of danger and onward. This means to say that they were against the fact that people had the get. So isha gova ksubasa shelo beget. So then already a wife can collect her ksuba without the get. The reason she didn't have the get was because it was dangerous to keep a get. Ubalchov gova shelo bepruzbul. And similarly, a balchov, a creditor, can collect even if he doesn't have his pruzbul. And Rashi over here explains, Harei elu lo yiparu. Again, in both of these cases, if she doesn't have her get, or let's say the creditor doesn't have his pruzbul, so then the person doesn't have to pay. Because again, we're afraid maybe she already collected with the get. As we said, it's possible to collect with a get without the ksuba. So shvius, and also in the other case, maybe shvius passed and it canceled the debt, and therefore this person doesn't have a pruzbul, he cannot collect. But then the Mishnah said, Min hasakana, from the time of danger, shegazru ovdei kochavim ala mitzvahs, where the ovdei kochavim, the idol worshiper, says you're not allowed to do mitzvahs, vayu yureim lishmor gitein. So then it was already dangerous for the woman to keep her get. Umisha kibalto sarfasa, she would burn it immediately. V'chein pruzbulayin, and the same thing was true by the pruzbul. So already in such a situation, so then it's possible to collect even without the get because it was dangerous to keep the get. It's possible to collect without the pruzbul because it's dangerous to keep the pruzbul. Rashi over here says pruzbul b'Mesechet gitin mefarish perak hasholech get. What is a pruzbul? Hillel hiskin pruzbul kadei shelo tishamet shvius. Hillel instituted this concept of pruzbul so that shvius, the Shemitah year, would not cancel the debts. Shemoser shtaros of lebezdin. The idea is the person gives his shtaros to bezdin sheyigvu min alova chova, that they'll be the ones to collect from the lova. Calls man sheyitvenu dehashalo kriyan be lo yigos she'eno tova klum, because then it's not already a violation of lo yigos. He's not collecting after Shemitah because he's not the collector. El habezdin tovo. It's really the court that's now collecting. Hefkerim hefker vehem yarden lenachas, because Bezin has the ability to take people's property. And the Gemara says, Shma Mino, you see from our Mishnah, again in the beginning of our Mishnah, the Mishnah said, let's say she takes out a get and she doesn't have the ksuba, so she's allowed to collect. So you see from the Mishnah, Kozvin Shover, it must be that the custom is that we do write a shover, we do write a receipt. After the husband pays the ksuba, really he's supposed to have a receipt. He's supposed to have evidence that he paid. And that's why in a situation where she doesn't have the ksuba, and she only has her get, she's allowed to collect, because we can say to the husband, if you really already paid, you would have the receipt. The ain't Kozvin Shover, because the Gemara says simply, if we say that there is no receipt for the husband, so how could she collect with a get without the ksuba? Leichosh dilma mifka lo l'chsuba. So we should be afraid she'll collect with the get the ksuba, and then later she'll take out her ksuba, which she really has, v'gavya bon, she'll be able to collect with the ksuba as well, so that will cause a problem. And so the Gemara says, Amar Rav says, B'mokum shein kosvin ksuba askin. And you have to say that the beginning of our Mishnah, when it says she can collect the ksuba with just the get, it's talking about in an area, in a location where they don't write a ksuba. That's why there's no concern she's going to come later and collect with the ksuba after she collects with the get. Shmuel Amar, and Shmuel says, no, af b'mokum shekosvin ksuba. Even in a situation, even in a place where they write a ksuba, a woman is allowed to collect if she produces only her get. And so the Gemara says, well, one second again, Shmuel kosvin shover. According to Shmuel, then it must be that we write a receipt, because otherwise, again, she's going to collect with the get, then she'll take out the ksuba later. We're in an area where they write ksubas, and she'll collect the second time. So therefore, it must be that we write him a receipt in order to prevent that. Amar Rav Anan, so Rav Anan says on that, L'didi mefarshali mine de Mar Shmuel, it was explained to me from Mar Shmuel, from the master Shmuel, as follows. B'makom she'ein kosvin, it works in the following fashion. If you're in a place where they generally do not write a ksuba, V'yamar kasafti, so she takes out a get. She's trying to collect her ksuba, and it's an area where they don't have a ksuba, so she should be able to collect. But he claims, no, I wrote her a ksuba. She needs to produce the ksuba. So all of lahavi raya, in such a situation, he does need to bring evidence that there was a ksuba. Otherwise, he's going to need to pay. That's how she can collect with only the get. But Malcolm Shekosva, now if it's an area where they actually traditionally write a ksuba, V'yamran, she says, Lo kasavli, she says, he never wrote me a ksuba, that's why I'm collecting with just the get. So then it's also true, Aleha lahavi raya, so she's going to need to bring the proof. She can't just collect with the get, she'll also need to bring evidence that there was no ksuba written in this case. And the Gemara points out, V'yaf Rav Haderbe, and even Rav, he retracted from what he originally said. Rav originally said that the Mishnah is specifically talking about a situation where it's a location where they don't write a ksuba, but Rav changed his mind. The Amar Rav, because Rav said, Bein b'makom shekosvin, whether you're in a place where they write a ksuba, Bein b'makom she'ein kosvin, whether it's a place where they do not write a ksuba, it actually doesn't make a difference. The reason why she can collect with a get, and we're not afraid she'll also collect with a ksuba, and she'll collect twice, is because actually each document collects a different item. Get gova ikar ksuba. The halach is as follows: when a woman produces the get, she uses the get to collect the main ksuba. That's the 100 or the 200 dinar. But that's when it calls to that's when it comes to the get. Get gova ikar, rather it should be the get collects the main part of the ksuba, and then it should read as follows: ksuba gova tosefes. But then when she produces the ksuba, that's any additional money that was written in the ksuba beyond either the 100 or the 200 dinar. Anything additional is collected with the ksuba. So according to Rav, it's very simple. According to Rav, the reason why when a woman produces a get, she's able to collect even though she doesn't have the ksuba, is because the get and the ksuba, they actually collect different parts of the payment. They're used for different types of collection, and there's no problem whatsoever. Shmuel's approach again was slightly different. Shmuel said no, they collect the same thing, but she always has to bring evidence, or one party will always have to bring evidence if they're claiming that they did against the local custom. So for example, if she's collecting with a get and the local custom is not to write a ksuba, so she's fine. And if he claims he wrote a ksuba in such a case, he has to prove that he wrote a ksuba. And the same is in the opposite direction. Let's say she is trying to collect with only the get and the custom is to write the ksuba. She has to bring evidence that there was no ksuba. So that's the machlokas here between Rav and between Shmuel. And the Gemara continues, if anyone who wants to try to refute this can come and try to refute this, but that's the halacha. Again, the get collects the main part and the ksuba collects the extra part. And the Gemara now says, Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, let's bring a proof to this issue, this machlokas Rav and Shmuel, from the later part of our Mishnah. The Mishnah said, Ksuba ve'eini get. Again, it talked about a case, the opposite case. Let's say she produces her ksuba, but she doesn't produce the get. So he omeres avad giti. Now she's saying, I lost my get. I want to collect on the basis of the ksuba. V'hu omer avad shovar. And he says, well, if you lost your get, I actually had a shovar. I already paid you, but I lost my shovar, so I don't want to pay you now. V'chein bal chov, and the same is true by a creditor. Shahotzi shtar chov. He takes out his document to collect. Ve'eini mo pruzbul, and there's no pruzbul. So again, the claim is that Shemitah canceled this. Harei elu lo yiparu. In these cases, they don't have to pay. And so the Gemara now says, B'shalom l'Shmuel, we can understand this part of the Mishnah according to Shmuel. Again, this part of the Mishnah was saying that if she produces the ksuba without the get, she cannot collect. So muki lo b'makom she'ein koson, we can say we're talking about an area, it's a location where generally a ksuba is not written. V'yamar kasafti, and he says, he's claiming I already wrote a ksuba, therefore I don't have to pay when she just produces the get. The amrinan le, but what did Shmuel say? Shmuel said that we say to him, I sirai, you have to bring a proof that you wrote the ksuba. V'lo my sirai, and if he doesn't have a proof that the ksuba was written, amrinan le zil pare, so then we tell him that he has to pay on the basis of a get alone. And that's why this is very problematic. If she produces a ksuba and does not produce the get, so then we don't want to make him pay, because what if she has the get later on? She'll produce the get and she'll be able to collect with the get alone, because we're in a location where they do not write ksuba, and he doesn't have evidence that he wrote a ksuba, and she'll be able to collect twice. That's why it makes sense to say, if there's a possibility to collect with the get without the ksuba, then it makes sense to say that if she produces the ksuba without the get, she cannot collect. Elul Rav, but according to Rav, that the ksuba and the get, they are used to collect different parts of the payment. So nihi de ikr lo gavya. So I understand if she produces the ksuba, she can't collect the main portion of the money, the main part of the ksuba, because that's collected with the get. But tosefes miyotigbi, but she should be able to collect the additional, because the ksuba document is used to collect the additional payment. And so the Gemara answers, Amar Rav Yosef says, Hacha b'mayaskin, and here, what does the Mishnah mean when it says if she has the ksuba without a get, she cannot collect? Kishe'ein shamei de gerish, and she doesn't even have witnesses that she's a divorcee. For all we know, she's still married. So migo diyachol amemer lo gerashtia, since not in such a case, he's able to say, I never even divorced her, I don't owe any money. That's why in this case he's able to get out of paying her anything. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Peites Amud Beis.